Morning, Cibolo Valley. Today I'd like to give you something that is, I hope, both interesting and useful in both helping you to trust Scripture, to know that God is telling us the whole truth, and to know that you are part of the true belief system in this world. Um, there's a question that skeptics will ask. Where did Cain get his wife? That's supposed to be unanswerable, but it's not. Both the Bible and science give us real answers for this. Um, I'm going to give you 4 reasons why Cain could marry his sister and that his wife was either his sister or his niece. Number one, only close relatives were available. The Bible shows us that everyone descends from the first two people, from Adam and Eve. We didn't evolve from a shared ancestor with monkeys and apes. We were created in the image of God somewhere around 6,000 years ago. Adam called his wife Eve because she would be the mother of all living, of all people. Cain didn't have a secret source for a spouse. The skeptics used to say, they don't say this much anymore, but they used to say what they call the out of Africa theory, that 5 to 30 different couples or pairs of hominids, humanoids, is what started the human race. One little problem with that, we have something called the Eve syndrome. When you look at mitochondrial DNA, that's short strands of DNA, about 7,500 base pairs, that's within the power centers of our cells, the mitochondria. We find such similarity as to know that we all came from one original woman. Not 5 original women, not 30, but one, which is exactly what the Bible tells us. So we are all of one race. So if there weren't these other races of people running around out there, the only possibility is for Cain to have married either his sister, or a niece. Now, a lot of people will fall back on this and say, well, wait a minute. Marriage has to be between close relatives. That's prohibited in the Bible. And it will be in Leviticus by Moses 2,500 years after Cain. Originally, Adam and Eve had perfect DNA, no mutations. As we gain mutations over the centuries, we get what we call genetic load, and that's the reason why we prohibit close relatives from marrying today, because if there's nothing to cover up a mutation, if you have the same mutation in the same spot, that becomes a birth defect in children when the two mate, etc. But that was not a problem prior to the flood, or for some time after the flood as well. People will also say, well, the Bible itself says that he met his wife somewhere else. And that's really not true. In Genesis 4:16 and 17, it says that he left Eden and he went, or left the Eden area, and went to the land of Nod, and that he knew his wife in the land of Nod. So they had sexual relations in the land of Nod, but that does not say that they met there or that this was some other foreign people. It just says the place where they set up a life. Third point, marriage between close relatives wasn't scientifically and medically dangerous. I've already described that in the fact that with this almost perfect DNA that Cain had, that his sisters, that all of his relatives had at that point, they could marry, and in fact this will occur much later, but close relatives could marry. If you remember, Abraham married his half-sister Sarai. No problem with that. It wasn't prohibited by the Bible yet, and that was in 2000 BC, because again there wasn't the genetic load. God began to forbid it at the time that it did become a problem for us. And finally, everyone marries a relative. Now we get appalled at that today because we're conditioned to that culturally and because of paying attention to the Leviticus prescription not to do so. But you may not have known that you have a 95% chance of having a shared ancestor just 600 years ago to anyone you meet. Because we all came out of the same stock, out of the same human race. We are told in Acts 17:26, and he has made one blood of every nation of men to dwell on the face of the earth. That coincides with what we found with the Eve syndrome genetic data, and it coincides with the fact that the Bible shows that we all came from these original two people. We are all one blood. And that should really affect our race relations, because the idea of races is really a misnomer. Those are people groups. Those aren't different species or different people. Cain may have married his sister, but everyone is still marrying their relative in some way. I hope that this laid a skeptical question at bay for you. But more importantly, I hope it showed you how the Bible has answers, that they're in agreement with science, and that you can believe the Bible from the very first word. And we're out.